Hi, welcome back to Therapy Pages podcast. I'm April.
And I'm Doree.
Gosh, I feel like it's been a while since our last podcast episode, even though I guess it's only been a couple weeks. But
Yeah.
it feels like a long time for some reason.
Feels like a lot's happened since then. I guess with the holidays coming up
That makes sense. Yes,
and the world changing every day.
that is true. It feels
So,
like a little more time has gone by. So,
yeah. Yeah.
so welcome back. I want to apologize. Last episode we said that it was our fifth episode, but it was actually our sixth episode. So that would make today our seventh episode.
Which is crazy, our fun little project.
Yes, that turned into 7 episodes, so it's exciting.
Yeah, it is. And it's fun.
It is. So today we're gonna talk about a very interesting book, The Courage to Be Disliked. So, a few of my clients had read this book, and I was also seeing it, on social media here and there, and I thought, "That sounds great. I want to have the courage to be disliked."
What
So
would that look like?
Well, right, what would that look like? So I kinda went into it thinking that I would learn how to maybe just not care so much about what other people think, or how to manage those feelings when you kinda know maybe someone doesn't like you. That's what my thoughts, but it's so much more than that. So I really enjoyed it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I really liked it. And what's interesting is it was very different than what I thought. I didn't know that it was based, which I guess we're going to just dive right in, but I didn't know that it was based on Alfred Adler, Adlerian therapy. I did not know that, which I thought was interesting. And probably had I just read the, you know, jacket cover or a description of the book. But yeah, I took it for the title, right? So I'm like, oh, wow, like that could be really helpful for so many people. Um, but yeah, so I did. I mean, overall, I really liked it, and I also appreciate that I listened to it rather than read it. Although I do want to go back now and read the physical book
Mhm.
because of the conversational style. So, what did you think? Did you read it or
Yeah.
listen?
So my plan was to read it and I was going to buy it and I went to a bookstore and I picked up the book and I started reading it because I had some time and as I started reading it the back and forth was really confusing for me and I was kind of like, oh, this isn't going to work for me. I was getting very distracted. So the way that it's written, it was written by a Japanese philosopher and there's two parts in the book, so it's his part and then the part of the youth. And the youth, I don't think they ever said his exact age, but my guess is like he's like college age.
Yeah, the voice sounded. I mean, the voice that they used, but yeah, I don't. I mean, it sounded like he was college, early 20s, like just coming into adulthood.
Yeah, yeah, that was my thought too. So when I yeah, was trying to read it, it wasn't working for me. And then I ended up listening to it and it was so much better. So I would probably recommend if you're someone who has any kind of attention issues, maybe listening might be a little bit easier.
I agree. I know. I mean, since I started listening, because I was able to download it, pretty quickly, and I was going for a walk. I'm like, oh, I'm going to get started. I'm not good at books like that have the
Yeah.
conversation style. Like um, I have to really focus, and I enjoy them when I listen to them, though. I really do.
Yeah.
But yeah, reading them is just a different. Um, yeah, it's like takes different skills.
Yeah, it does. And after I had listened to it, I did some research, and everyone who was narrating the book, they are all actors, voice actors.
Oh,
And I think they just all did such a great job of being able to kind of, yeah, get across the point of the book. So I would highly recommend to listen to it.
yeah, I agree. So I'm going to say that when I was listening to it, that and I don't remember exactly how it was worded, but it was very early in the book, and it talked about, I don't remember if the exact quote was like trauma isn't real or trauma, doesn't, trauma is irrelevant. But as soon as I heard that, I'm like, oh, I wonder how April's going to feel. about that because we are trauma therapists, right? And so like when that came out, I'm like, oh wow, like what? Like let me and then it makes or there is no trauma. Is that what he said? But it
Trauma does
makes
not exist.
yeah.
Yes, because trauma does not exist.
But as he like clarified what he meant by that, I was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I can definitely understand where he's coming from. And now yeah, I see that. And I agree, in
Yeah.
that.
And even as he said, trauma doesn't exist, the young kid was like, "Oh, what? What are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense." So
Right.
I could really relate to how he was feeling, and basically all of the book, honestly, because I think he did such a good job of just being honest in how he was feeling. Like, oh, it doesn't really seem to make any sense. So I
Mm-hmm.
really liked that part too.
Yeah. Yeah. And he really like, I mean, the youth's questions or observations were clearly like, I mean, the way the book was written were clearly meant to like get people thinking. And because a lot of people probably felt the way the youth did, right? When you're first introduced to these concepts. So I think they did a good job with that. And um, his inflection and intonation and the way he spoke, I think was helpful too. Because
Yeah.
he was like, what do you mean trauma doesn't exist? What do you mean it's all in my head?
Yes, it was. Yeah, I think it was just so great that it was that idea of bringing up these concepts and then having someone kind of argue, debating those things. Because I was feeling that way in the beginning of the book. I was kind of like, this is not what I was expecting, and I don't think I'm going to like this, and I'm not really buying into this. And by the end of the book, I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because in that same, I think, chapter that he says, because it was in the beginning of the book that he says about trauma doesn't exist, that's where he talks about teleology versus etiology. And I'm like, yes, that makes sense. So teleology is, what are life's purpose and meaningful life, and etiology is cause and effect. So you experience difficult things, so you are going to feel this way instead of you helping to determine how you're going to feel, right? And by your actions and by what you do, and by reframing also.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so I didn't know, I think we talked about this earlier. I must have studied some form of Adlerian psychology in school, but I honestly don't really remember it. So the concept was new or new again to me. So
Mm-hmm.
I it is very interesting.
Yeah, yeah, I liked it. So the other another thing that I liked about or that I took away from is the idea of separation of tasks, you know,
Yes.
because I mean, I find that I tell people that, that you're not responsible for how somebody else feels. Like that's not yours. You are just responsible for what you do. So, like an example of feeling guilty for not doing something. So, well, I have to go to this event or my mom's going to be mad at me. Well, that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is, do you go to the event or do you not? How your mom or somebody else feels is not yours.
Yes, I love that idea because, like you said too, I feel like I talk about this so much in session, and I say it, yeah, in that way of, okay, well, we don't have to take on other people's emotions or their responsibility. But I love the way of explaining it in tasks because it makes so much more sense. So having that focus on what is your task and what is this other person's task.
Mm,
And I think that he talked about three main tasks in life, which are was it work, friendship, and love? I think were kind of the three that he had to focus on. But just knowing that those tasks are yours and to not have expectations for anyone else's tasks and to
mm-hmm.
not allow other people's expectations for your tasks to kind of get into you too. So it was a really, really cool way of explaining that idea of tasks.
Yeah, and that we're not responsible for people's reactions. Now,
Yeah,
I mean, obviously, having said, saying that, it's important to not be, a jerk about things. But
right.
yeah, but you're not responsible for how somebody feels if you don't want to do anything. If you don't want to do something, or you don't want to, you don't want to go to an event or whatever, you're doing it just out of guilt. So that's looking at that. Well, what's that about?
Right. Yes. Mhm. And especially he talked about the relationship of, like a parent and a kid, and to, have those, even those tasks be separate, and not putting those emotions and expectations on your
Hmm.
kids.
Yeah, I wrote down someone else's disappointment is not your task.
Yes. And that's so hard to do, and such a hard concept to learn, I think, in any way. So it's, yeah, really
Hmm.
important, especially with the holidays coming up, knowing that, it's okay to take time to yourself. It's okay to say no to things and set those boundaries.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And it's hard for people to do that. And I think that's something interesting to reflect on. Like, okay, well, why do we take responsibility for other people's feelings or, reactions? So,
Yeah, and to think about that, yeah.
yeah, the book definitely, there were a lot of times where I would just be like, and I'd either finish and just really reflect on what I just read, or just like they would come back later. I'm like, wow, yeah, that no, like just there was a lot of self reflection in the book, and um, a lot of what's the word? Like I found a lot of my clients reflected in the book, and a lot of the therapy speak that that I use in the book, which was interesting. And I'm not necessarily an Adlerian therapist, but I do believe in a lot of it.
Yeah, I agree. And I really also like that idea he was talking about, because this reminds me of DBT and Marshall Linehan. But the idea that if something happens, that our reaction is usually not based upon that specific thing that happens, it's based upon how we feel.
Mm,
So, and Marshall talks about like our interpretation of that event.
yeah,
So we have a reaction not based upon like that prompting event, but how we interpret that. And that's just such a good, I think, reminder too in life of, like it's not necessarily the thing that happens, but it's how we feel about that, and we can change how we feel about that.
right, right. Yeah, and even that, going back to the separation of tasks, even that, like feeling guilt over mom's disappointment. Well, is that really what that feeling that it's evoking is about? So
Yes.
like
Yeah.
what does mom's disappointment mean to you that you're not like what's the message you get from that? And I think that's more reflection. So the book, like it's as you listen, or I guess read, because I didn't read it, but as you listen, it's like a conversation between two people, but it's so much deeper than that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And there were so many times that the youth would say, like, I think I need to take some time
Yeah.
to kind of go home and think about this. And I'll, come back when I feel ready to talk more about it, because to him it was, he was getting frustrated at times and not understanding, and just asking questions. So I really like that too, that he allowed himself just to go home, think it over. And I think every time he came back, he was kind of like, okay, yeah, this makes sense to me now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I agree. So there was the past does not define you, right?
Yes, which makes sense with the trauma, like kind of the idea of trauma doesn't exist. It's just that idea the past does not define you. So,
Mm-hmm. And that you have more say you know, in how you deal with whatever happened in the past. So
yes.
uh what separation of tasks, living without the need for recognition. That was another
Yes.
big theme. What do you think about
Mhm.
that?
Oh my gosh, I was as I was listening to this, I was like in a lot of ways having thoughts of, wow, I have been doing therapy wrong in some ways. But then reminding myself like there's no right or wrong, but that idea of recognition, especially I think he was talking about, yeah, again, that parent-child relationship of, almost sounds like positive reinforcement to me. And I was just like, oh, I'm always big on positive reinforcement with DBT and behavior change. But he explained it in a way that made sense, which was that if you're constantly searching for like that recognition, that that doesn't create freedom for you. And having that
Mm,
feeling that if you don't need any of those things creates just a huge sense of freedom. And I was like, wow, yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, it really is. It I think it gets in the way of finding your true self.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, when that's your goal or your like your North Star, that I need approval. And if I get approval, then I know I'm okay. I think you're not okay.
Yes, and
And
how to get to a place of not needing that approval, which is so hard to do.
yeah. And think about, like, I mean, isn't that social media? Like that's what social media is all about. And I was thinking about like younger people who, or even influencers for that matter, but who, oh, well, I have this many likes, or I have this many, or I only have this many, so, and it can go both ways. I have this many likes, like if it's a huge number. So I'm just a wonderful person. I'm in a great place. Do you really feel that inside? Or is that just the barometer? Is that you know, your your measuring stick? And then
Right.
those who look at like, oh, well, I only have, 5 friends or 100 friends or 500 friends. And what's wrong with me? So,
Yes, that leading to that thought, what's wrong with me? Yeah.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Instead of just being authentically you, which I know they talk about too. So, I mean, I think that's one of the themes, like living in your own authenticity.
Yes, I think I experienced this a little bit when we first started the podcast of looking up other other podcasts, especially of people reviewing books and things like that. But yeah, I mean, this is new for us, and we're doing our thing. We have our own style, so
Exactly.
not comparing. Yes.
And just, I think that's a really good example, actually, because
Yeah.
I think we both kind of felt like, oh, is anybody going to listen? And then we got to the point where, well, we don't really care, because it's just like we're giving our opinion and we enjoy books and we're talking about it. And so people may listen and people may not. And
Yes, we want you to listen for sure,
yes,
but
of course. Yes,
but
please
if not,
listen. But we're
please
not,
like our
we're not,
podcast.
we're not basing our value on that.
Yes, exactly. We're learning as we're going. Yeah.
Yes, please listen and let us know if you know how to add music.
Or if you want to do it for us.
Yeah, we'll get there.
We
We will
will.
get there. Yeah.
Yeah, that was another great point too. So he says live for contribution, not competition.
Mm, that's real DBT, isn't it?
It is, and also, I mean, Brene Brown, when we did Atlas of the Heart, just how much she talked about that idea of comparison and competition, and how it's just so not helpful.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And when you are contributing, so to me, that's, I'm either doing something to better other people, or I'm doing something to, maybe better myself, or, or animals or the earth or whatever. That's purpose. And that goes back to the teleology versus etiology, right? So
Yeah.
that's, you're bringing meaning and purpose to your life, through contribution. And I think that just, even if people don't realize that it causes, I think, a fundamental shift in within you when you go from, well, I have to do X, Y, and Z because they're doing X, Y, and Z, versus, well, no, I don't. I mean, as a homeowner, and you might know this, like, around me, we have a lot of people who um are all about keeping their grass green, right? And I don't
Yeah.
like that, because to me, that's poisonous. So instead, we tried to build a pollinator garden. So to me, that was contributing. And I felt really, really good. It might look wild. And, in suburban America, a lot of places that's not accepted, but that gave purpose and meaning. And that's like just a simple everyday example of changing from competition to, oh, my grass has to be cut and da 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 da, to contribution in my way, that I'm going to bring the birds and the bees and the, and all the things.
Yeah, that's a great example because the author also really talks about that idea that of it doesn't have to be this huge event or this huge thing, and it also doesn't have to be something that you necessarily do that other people have to notice. That you're really
Mm-hmm.
doing it only for yourself and to bring that sense of a purpose and connection in your community, and how that is really what brings true happiness.
Yeah, yeah. And if you feel good about, like, it
Yeah,
doesn't matter that other people, like, why does their lawn look wild? Right? So,
right. They
but
don't
you're
need to
right.
know.
They, well, but that's that part of the letting go of the competition, and so, yeah, yeah. And knowing that you are contributing for or at least we feel that we're contributing for the, I guess, greater good. But
Yeah, and
yeah.
it has such a great relation to the other books that we read that also just talked about how, finding purpose and meaning in your life and contributing in some way. And also the 12 steps. I mean, people tell me that they stay sober by following the 12 step, which is contributing in some kind of
Mm-hmm.
way. And that can be in any way, like it can be the smallest thing, but it just gives you that sense of feeling connected and feeling that you have a purpose.
Mm-hmm. And also, although I don't think it was explicitly said this way, but also acceptance, right? So accepting flaws, accepting you as you are, and that again, everything leads back to DBT, doesn't it? So that, back to radical acceptance, the
Yeah.
concept in DBT that acceptance and letting go is so important. So in this book, it talks about what we just said, competition, versus contribution. So being able to accept where you are and let go of any of the expectations of others or whatever, let go of the things, that were holding you back. And just the freedom to be you, which the freedom to be disliked or to not be accepted, right? But you accept. So,
Yes, yeah, and how much freedom there is in that to have that
mm,
feeling. Yeah.
mm-hmm. Do you feel like when you were at that part of the book, do you feel like the way they frame it, do you feel like you have that freedom, like to be willing to be disliked? Do you feel that, like, as he
I
talked about
think
it?
yeah, I think that I've come a long way with that. I don't know if I would say yes yet, but I think that I've come a long way and still working on it. It reminds me of DBT, that acceptance of change,
Mm-hmm.
acceptance of keep where you're at now and the change. So yes, and I'm still working on that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that might be a lifelong thing. But like as you
Yeah.
reflect back on your life and you know where you placed, well, even like we were talking about social media a few minutes ago, like where
Yeah.
you place needing to be liked and accepted
Mhm.
to now. I thought about as a therapist, when I was a new therapist, I wanted to be liked. Like that was a really
Yes.
important to me.
Mhm. Yeah, that's such a great point because I think probably a lot of people do, but then you start to realize that maybe putting all of that pressure to be liked can definitely interfere in like the therapeutic relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And your
yeah.
yeah, and your client being able to progress, and being able to, to say things that maybe might be hurtful to them or they may not like, or, but doing it in a therapeutic way that you can talk about it and process it.
Mm-hmm. Well, but in therapy, like it's not about being like what. So you pointing something out, if we go back to what was it, the separation of tasks.
Yes.
So our
Mhm.
task is to be open and honest with our observations, right? I mean, we don't tell
Yeah.
people what to do, but we're open and honest about, you know, what they bring to us. And so sometimes some of the things that we say, if we stay on that, well, I want this client to like me because I want them to come back.
Mhm.
If that's where we come from, then we may not be open and honest and we may not, you know, be giving them what they really need, which is observations that they may not like. And I've worked through that with a lot of clients. I had one client that I pointed something out to her and she just got really mad and she ghosted me for like 6 months. And then
That has happened to me as well. Yeah. Mhm.
and then came back and
Yep.
was like, I was really mad at you. I'm like, I figured. I said, but how do you feel about it now? And they're like, well, you were right. That's why I was really mad at you, and it was just pointing out something that and it wasn't in a mean way. It was just like, what do you think about this? Like, here's what I see, like you
Mhm.
really want this relationship and it's never going to be, this person isn't capable of giving you that relationship. Right. So, and yeah, so I think that was a defining moment for me in the courage to be disliked as a therapist, because it needed to be said. And if I continued to, I don't know if it's, I don't know how to if not be in her narrative, but if I continued without pointing this very important thing out, I felt like that wasn't being honest or authentic. So,
Yes.
and it
And
ended
that's
up
not,
being really, really important in therapy. So,
yeah, so I was going to say, right, because that's not helpful for you or the client, right? So, and then those are things that you can work through together if you're honest about how you felt, and then
yep.
knowing that, right, that was your task, and this is her
Mhm.
task.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, when she came back after she ghosted me for like 6 months. So it's pretty funny.
that happens
Yeah.
sometimes. Yeah, yeah, but how great for her to come back, in that
Yeah.
situation too, and talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we still kind of joke about that moment. And I remember her face when I said, what I said, and it just went like completely flat. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I think I've lost her. But
And that happens. Yeah,
yeah. But that's that needing to be authentic. And so not, I mean, even it not just therapists, but I think anybody, like I think the authenticity is so important. And if you don't have the courage to be disliked, then how are you truly authentic?
right. Yes, and to know that, yeah, you are going to be disliked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think? So I think pretty early on in the book too, I was thinking, because he was talking about how the world is actually simple. And the youth was like, "What do you mean? The world is not at all simple." I feel like I was feeling frustrated in that moment. And then he said about, yeah, trauma not existing. And then the next thing was all problems are interpersonal relationship problems. And
Mm.
I was like, okay, this book is going to be just as bad therapy. Thank-
Oh,
Thankfully, it was
no.
not. So, but what do you think about that idea that all problems are interpersonal relationship problems?
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting also. Because uh, if you think about it, how we relate to others is is the problem, because we either infer what others are doing or saying, like we put meaning to that, and so
Yeah.
yeah, and communication is clearly, an issue. But yes, I think when he said that, like, and how he starts off those segments or those chapters or the day or whatever, their meetings, like all problems are, just as you said, interpersonal. it, I'm like, well, you can't make it that simple. But it's not that, and that's what I was saying earlier, like it's not that he made everything so simple, but he broke it down into those simple sentences and then started to define what he meant, or what Adler, what he would have said. So,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
I agree. I mean, I think our, I mean, look at relationships and look at like
Mhm.
why relationships fall apart, when, like, if you've ever had clients who they just can't communicate with one another. And that's why, like, they may even be saying the exact same thing, but because their interpersonal skills are not, matching or aligning, they just fight, or they can't get along, and it causes so
Yeah.
many problems.
Yeah, and a lot of times there are so many problems because everyone in the relationship is trying to manage the other person's emotions, and they're
Yep.
so focused on, well, if I say this to them, they're going to be upset, they're going to be angry. But if you can have that separation of tasks, that it's not your task to worry about, that person's feelings. Like, of course, you can be there and listen and talk those things out and validate, but it's really not your responsibility if someone else becomes very angry at something you say, a need or a want that you're asking for.
Yeah. And I think he talked about like shifting from superior, inferior to community, right? So, like,
Yeah.
in relationships. And I think that was
Mhm.
part of the me. Yeah. And that's like, if you look at somebody as better or worse than you, then you're going to just go into this, you know, one person is good, one person is, but whatever, you're going to go into that interaction with something that you may not even be aware of that you're going into it with. So instead, if you look at, we are all humans, and we are all like, this is a community. We are community. I just feel like that changes.
It does, and yeah, with in that he talked about relationships having that power dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, someone would maybe have more power than the other, or a relationship with like your boss. Or he even talked about relationship between him and the youth because he was like an elder of the youth. So I think in that aspect, it was so interesting because he talked about how happiness would be having more horizontal relationships and
Mm-hmm.
not vertical relationships. So those vertical relationships is that someone is better than the other or yeah, higher in some
Yeah.
regard. So
Or lower. Yeah.
or lower,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And that made me think of when I talk to clients again, but also in life, my own relationship and, family, like reinforcing that we are on the same team. Like we are not
Yes.
against one another. We're not adversaries. We are all working towards that same goal. And that's what that part said to me, like just to
Yeah.
reinforce that, that sense of community, or that we have we are all have the same goal or whatever in this interaction, or in this life, so.
Yes. It's so important to remember when you're getting into, an argument is to
Mm,
remind yourself that you probably both want the same things.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember a therapist shared with me something. I think it was EFT, emotionally focused therapy, that he used to practice, but where clients would fight about, like, you made chicken for dinner, and why'd you make the chicken for blah, blah, blah. And it's not about the chicken. Like, what is it really about? Is it about that you didn't ask? Did they want, like, that you felt
Right.
like your your information wasn't ascertained, or your idea, or your suggestions, or what is, it's not really about the chicken, it's about something else. And I think that, to me, that came up too, like it, and back to communication, and
Yes.
again, back to DBT.
All of those things. And I was thinking after I finished listening to it too, I was just thinking about their relationship and how in the beginning they had such differing views and they were able to sit down and have multiple conversations with each other without raising their voices or
Mhm.
becoming angry. They never said anything even remotely near, like mean or hurtful to each other. And it was just, I think, such a great modeling of that
Oh
behavior
yeah.
of how you can have a conversation with someone that you don't agree with, but still, really be able to listen to each person's point of view. And at the end, it was just really sweet how their relationship, I think, kind of ended. They were both just expressing their appreciation for each other, being able to take the time to listen and to talk through the
Yeah.
feelings.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, isn't that, like, that's such a strong message today in the world we live in, where it's just people are so divided that,
Yeah.
back to, what I said a minute ago, that I think we are more alike than we are different. And we have more similar goals than we have different. And there's so much divisiveness now because we're stuck on this language, or stuck on this idea that, whatever it is, like in politics or whatever, that people can't talk anymore. Like, they just fight. And if we were able to break that down and just, like, what are we really saying to one another? Like, we really actually, we all want to live in peace, and we want to have freedom, and we want to have all these things. We have so much more in common. And if we could just take some lessons like that to, um yeah, to the world right now.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Because even they, even the youth and the elder, I think they had so much more in common than they realized. I think the
Yeah.
elder maybe realized it because, you know, but the youth, the way he was taking some of the things that the elder said, was like, well, wait, what do you mean? Like we said earlier, and I think once
Mhm.
it was explained, and he was able to take that time to reflect, he was able to see, oh, yeah, I get that. Okay, that makes sense to me, and I think it was congruent with what he already felt.
Yes, right, and yeah, they were kind of just on different paths in a way, but and
Mm-hmm.
I felt that way as well, so, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I liked it a lot, the book, and I liked it. Um, it was not what I expected it to be, you
Yeah,
know,
me neither, yeah, mhm.
but I really liked it. So, and I think that you absolutely get out of it, and the lesson, like the courage to be disliked. It
Yeah.
just, I think it was presented in such a way that, I didn't, it's not how I thought it was going to go. Well, one, I didn't think it was going to be like a basically Adlerian therapy, like,
Me neither. I did not
like
know that. Yes.
mini course.
Now we both know all about Adlerian theory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I don't know, is in my journey for I guess meaning in life and
Mm-hmm.
happiness. I feel like a lot of the books we read really it all does come down to purpose. Purpose
Mm-hmm.
purpose, community, meaning,
Yeah.
is what brings us happiness. So it's so interesting that we did not at all pick these books to go in this direction, but it seems like all of them are kind of fitting in, at least a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah.
And that idea of how important it is to have some form of meeting and being able to help and contribute, even in the smallest form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing that like also hit me, I one of those aha moments with it, and I think is a key takeaway, is that life is it's not about one long line of things. It's like a series of moments. And if we
Yeah.
live presently, which we've,
Yes.
that's also been a theme. If we
Yes.
live presently in the here and the now, we experience. Like, it's not a line that connects these dots, it's the dots. And I thought that was like, I
Yeah.
liked that.
Me too. Yeah, and you brought up I don't know how I forgot that, but yes, a huge point of the book and all of the other ones we read too is to keep yourself in the moment, to live in the moment and to know like yes, that you can have trauma, you have those things that, of course you need to work through, but how do you, focus on what is your goal now in this moment and what are you
Mm,
going to do?
mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by this
Mhm.
book.
I agree. What
So
would you rate it? 1 to 10 scale. Hmm.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like I've given so many books like such high scores. Well, except for Bad Therapy, but I guess there's a reason we choose them. I think um, for relatability, maybe like maybe an 8, but for me a 10. Like I think like who I would, and when I say relatability, like I'd be pretty selective on who I would recommend it to read. Now to listen, I could recommend it to anybody, but to read, I think um it's a different vibe.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I was going to say 8.5 also just because it was a really great book but yeah, comparing it to, like Brene Brown, Atlas of the Heart, I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't give it higher than that. But it
Mm-hmm.
was yeah, like you said, it definitely was not what I was expecting and I was pleasantly surprised. And I think that I learned a lot of new things and definitely will put a lot of new things into place both personally and professionally with my clients. So
Yeah, I
I'm
agree.
really happy that people recommended it.
What do you think are some takeaways?
I think that idea to what really stuck out to me is that those contributions. So I was focused on contributing and purpose after Man's Search for Meaning, but I was
Mm.
kind of, I think, thinking big scale, like, well, what can I do? And having some pressure on myself. But so I think the biggest takeaway was it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be pressure. It can be something small
Yeah.
and it can be something just for me that maybe other people don't even know about if they're not paying attention. So I think that was a huge takeaway for me. And that idea of tasks and to kind of put it just in those words because I think it's
Mm-hmm.
easier to explain to clients too. So
Yeah. And it's just on you. You're not responsible for everybody else. So then that,
yeah,
for things like people pleasers or other things, it really, I think, can be helpful for that. Like, no, this is like, just bring it back to you.
yep. Hmm.
Yeah.
And to have the
And
freedom to not have that put on you. Yeah.
yeah. And living presently, like I said, I think that was a takeaway. And it's, stop and smell the roses, like I think that's like just be present, and it's the little things that are the big things, and I think that's important, and I think that was reinforced. And that trauma doesn't define you. I think that's really, really
Mhm.
big. Your past does not define you. And that's already, I mean, as trauma therapists, we say that, but they really like the way he presents these, the ideas of the book and of Adlerian therapy, it really brings it home. Like your past does not define you. What meaning you give it, or things like that. That's where that comes in, and that's where things like shifting a little bit from competition to contribution, from feeling responsible for everybody's feelings and emotions to just yours. So I think that's really big. That's a big takeaway for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I think I would probably recommend it to anyone who would be interested in it. I would definitely recommend listening rather than
Mm-hmm.
reading. But if you want to read it, go for it. But for
Well,
me
and some
personally,
people can really read that back and forth well. To me, it just
yeah.
kind of like I think I get distracted, and that's my own
Yeah.
thing.
Me too. I was just as distracted. Yeah.
So, what about if people listen, do we have like recommendations or reflections for them?
Hmm. It's a good question.
Things for them to think about. Like, yeah. What do you
I
think?
think just thinking about in what ways do you or have you had the courage to be disliked? And what feelings come up for you if you haven't done that, even just thinking about that? What
Mm-hmm.
feelings come up and how do you manage those feelings?
Mm,
Um, Especially going into the holidays, how are you going to, yeah, I guess maybe set boundaries in those
mm.
interpersonal relationships?
What would you do if judgment didn't matter? Like if you didn't
Mm,
care about, you know, any
that's a
judgment?
great question too, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting as I was talking about boundaries, I don't think he mentioned boundaries. Do you remember or recall him
No, but it's
saying
clearly
that?
the idea of it, right? I
Mhm.
think the separation of tasks, that's I think boundaries, right? So, and
Yeah,
that's another reflection. How am I taking responsibility for other people's tasks?
yes, and I think this is gonna be helpful for me because I know I have clients who, as soon as I say boundaries, they kinda roll their eyes and they're like, "I know, I know." So,
Mm-hmm.
maybe this would be just a different way to, bring it up
Yeah,
and
a new language for it. Yeah, new words because it is really that, right?
yeah, yeah. And I think also as you're listening, like coming up with for yourself what contributions you want to make
Mm-hmm.
going forward. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think those are good reflections. Yeah, I think I liked it. I think it's a good, valuable resource. I think it gets
Yeah.
people to think differently. I think it can help, well, me and others to, not mm, not take responsibility for things that aren't yours, and
Yeah.
yeah, and look at how can I make not just the world better or not just my life better, but my life or the world or whatever. How can I contribute? Because that is, and back to so many of the other books we've read, what's my purpose? You know,
Yes.
or
Mhm.
in DBT language, create a life worth living. Like there were so
Yes.
many
Mhm.
things that came up as I was listening that like, wow, that's
Mhm.
like so so these themes, I mean, it's interesting. So I don't remember what book we chose next, but it is really interesting that we are just seeing like these same themes repeat over and over.
It is, and I was thinking that a lot too as I was listening to it, and especially, you and I are, DBT trained, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's just for us, but it does seem everything goes back to DBT in some ways. So I'd be curious, like other therapists who are maybe not DBT trained, what their take is on it. But I think, yeah, it is so much all related.
Yeah. 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 So I would love to hear from people. Maybe people can post well, we can post some of these reflection questions too on the show notes. That might be a good
Yes.
idea.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can feel free, to give us your ideas if you read the book, what your thoughts are, and yeah, we appreciate our listeners. We
Yeah.
appreciate guys who do come and listen to us talk about books. I think
Yeah.
so. We decided for next time to do wintering, which I don't know
Right.
anything about. Do you know anything about it?
I do not. And
Okay.
I bought it last year because it was on my daughter's to read, like we give books to our kids, and they're adult kids. But anyway, it was on her list, and I just read a little blurb about it. I'm like, oh, I want that. So I've actually had it since last year, and I kept meaning to read it, meaning to read it. So it was on my Goodreads to read list. So I'm excited that we're going to talk about it because then I have to read it. So
Kind of forces you into it, yeah.
yep, yep,
So we'll
yeah.
learn together and with you guys maybe. So if you want to read Wintering, I guess you can read
Hmm.
it or listen to it. So you can read it with
Yeah,
us, and in 2 weeks we'll be back and talking about that book. So
yep. No, so I have 2 weeks to read it. Okay. Yeah.
that's
And
enough.
so
That's plenty
maybe
of time.
it's plenty of time. So maybe over these next 2 weeks, challenge yourself to, allow yourself to be disliked.
Yes. And notice the feelings as they come up. You may feel anxious about it, and that is okay if it's new for you. But yeah, just
Hmm.
small areas of your life where can you have the courage to be disliked.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. And I'll be doing that as well.
Yes, me too.
All right. Well, that was fun. Okay.
Yes. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.